Some nights, it's not that your mind is racing, it's quieter than that, heavier. You might notice it as a pressure in the chest, or as a tiredness that sleep alone hasn't been able to touch. Not exhaustion from doing too much today, but from carrying too much for a long time. You don't have to figure out what it is. You don't have to name it. You don't have to decide whether it matters. Just noticing the weight is enough. Tonight is not about fixing anything, not about understanding, not about improving yourself in any way. This is a place where nothing is required of you. You may have spent a long time holding things together, being responsible, being available, being the one who doesn't drop anything. And over time, without anyone asking, your hands filled with expectations, with roles, with things that felt important or unavoidable or simply yours to carry. There is no mistake in that, no failure. But tonight, you don't need to keep holding everything. You don't need to let go forever. You don't need to make a decision. You don't need to change your life. Just for now, you can loosen your grip. Imagine that whatever you've been carrying doesn't disappear, but gently lowers, as if you're setting something down beside you, not throwing it away, not pushing it aside, just placing it where it doesn't need your hands anymore. Nothing bad happens when you do this. Nothing collapses. Nothing demands your attention. The world keeps breathing, and so do you. If your thoughts wander, that's fine. If you miss a sentence, that's fine too. There's nothing here you need to catch. You can listen, or you can simply let the sound pass through. This story isn't here to lead you anywhere. It doesn't need you to follow. It's only here to keep you company while you rest. And if rest comes quickly, you're welcome to drift. There's nothing left to hold right now. Nothing you need to carry into the night. There are things we carry without ever choosing to pick them up. They arrive quietly, so quietly that we don't notice the moment our hands are no longer empty. It doesn't happen all at once. It happens slowly, over time, in ordinary days. A small responsibility added here, an expectation placed there, a moment where you step in because no one else does, and because you can carry it, you do. At first it doesn't feel heavy, it feels normal, it feels like being capable, like being reliable. You tell yourself it's temporary, or necessary, or simply part of life, and maybe it is, but over time the weight changes, not suddenly, just enough to be felt in quiet moments. At night, when there's nothing left to distract you, you might notice it when you lie down and your body doesn't fully rest, or when your breath feels shallow, even though nothing is wrong. It's not always stress, not always worry. Sometimes it's just the accumulation of everything you've been holding steady. You may have carried other people's needs, their expectations, their unspoken hopes. You may have carried the role of being the calm one, the strong one, the one who doesn't fall apart. Or maybe you carried your own standards, the quiet rules you set for yourself, the ones that say, I should be able to handle this. None of this is a mistake. Carrying things is how we survive, how we connect, how we keep life moving. But even necessary things can become heavy when they're held for too long, and often we don't realize how full our hands are until there's no space left, no space to rest, no space to breathe, no space to feel light. Tonight, you don't need to sort any of this out. You don't need to decide which parts were worth carrying and which were not. This isn't a moment for judgment. It's a moment for noticing. Just noticing that you've been holding things. Some of them may still matter. Some of them may return tomorrow. But right now, you don't need to evaluate them. You only need to acknowledge that your hands have been busy for a long time, and that it's understandable if they feel tired. There's no need to replay the past. No need to count what you've done or what you've failed to do. Everything you carried made sense at the time, and because it made sense, you kept going. But sense doesn't always mean lightness, so for now, let yourself feel the simple truth of it. You have been carrying things, and that is enough to explain the weight you feel tonight. Nothing more is required. You don't have to put anything down yet. You don't have to change your grip. Just stay here for a moment with the awareness that your hands are full. In the next part of the story, we'll take a little distance, not to abandon anything, only to see it more gently. For now, you can rest exactly where you are. And sometimes the heaviest things we carry aren't the ones we talk about. They don't have names. They don't show up on lists. No one thanks you for holding them. They live in the background. The need to stay composed, the habit of being ready, the quiet alertness that never fully turns off. Even in rest, part of you stays awake, listening, watching, making sure nothing goes wrong. You may not remember when this started. It might have grown from a moment when things felt uncertain, or from a time when you learned it was safer to be prepared than surprised, so you adapted. You became someone who notices details, someone who anticipates, someone who fills the gaps before they become problems. And again, this is not wrong. These skills keep things running. They protect what matters. They hold fragile things in place, but they also add weight, because even when there's no emergency, your body remembers how to be ready. Your shoulders stay slightly lifted. Your breath stays a little higher. Your thoughts stay just ahead of the moment. It's subtle, easy to miss until you stop, until there's a pause long enough for the weight to make itself known. Sometimes it appears as restlessness, sometimes as dull pressure, sometimes as the feeling that you can't fully settle. You might tell yourself there's no reason for this, that others handle more, that you should be able to manage. But this isn't about comparison, and it isn't about weakness. It's about time, about how long you've been holding certain things without ever setting them down. Even strong hands grow tired when they're always full, and even useful roles can become heavy when there's no space outside them. So if tonight your body feels reluctant to soften, or your mind keeps a gentle watch, that makes sense. Nothing is wrong with you. You're simply noticing what has been there all along. You don't need to resolve it. You don't need to release it. Just allow yourself to recognize the effort you've been making. That recognition alone creates a little space. Not enough to change anything, just enough to breathe a bit more freely, and that's all we need right now. Sometimes rest doesn't begin by letting go. It begins by stepping back, not away from your life, not away from what matters, just far enough to breathe without holding everything so close. Distance doesn't mean rejection. It doesn't mean giving up. And it doesn't mean deciding anything forever. It's simply a change in how near things are. Think of something you've been carrying. You don't need to picture it clearly. You don't need to choose a specific memory. Just notice the sense of nearness, how close it feels, how much of your attention it occupies. When something is held too close, it fills the whole view. There's no horizon, no space around it, no place for your eyes to rest. So tonight, instead of putting anything down, you might imagine holding it a little farther from your body, not dropping it, not pushing it away, just extending your arms by the smallest amount. Notice what changes. The weight doesn't disappear, but the pressure shifts. Your shoulders may soften slightly, your breath may find a little more room. Your jaw might unclench without you telling it to. Distance does that. It gives the body permission to stop bracing. You're not required to solve what you're holding. You're not asked to decide its importance. All that's happening is a change in position, and sometimes that's enough. There may be many things competing for closeness in your life. People, responsibilities, thoughts that insist on being heard. When everything stays near at once, even gentle things become heavy. So imagine for a moment that only one thing is close. Everything else steps back, not out of your life, just out of your immediate space. Nothing is lost in this movement. Nothing becomes less real. It's simply less crowded. In that space, you might notice a quieter rhythm. Your breathing slows without instruction. Your thoughts stretch out, no longer stacked on top of each other. Time may feel different here, less urgent, less compressed. Moments don't rush into each other. They arrive, pause, and leave. This kind of distance isn't something you earn. It doesn't belong to people who have finished their work or resolved their problems. It's available whenever you allow things to stand a little farther away. You might feel a small resistance to this, a sense that if you step back, something important could be missed, that staying close is what keeps things safe. If that thought appears, you don't need to argue with it. Just notice it as another thing that doesn't need to be held so tightly right now. Even vigilance can rest for a moment. Distance doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you stop pressing, and pressing over time is what tires us most. So let your attention widen. Let the edges of your awareness grow soft. You don't need to watch everything. You don't need to stay ready. Things can exist without your constant closeness, and you can exist without being wrapped around them. In this slightly wider space, there is room for rest, not because anything is resolved, but because nothing is demanding your full grip. If your mind drifts here, that's natural. Distance allows that too. There is nothing to track, nothing to hold in place, just the quiet sense of being a little farther back than you were before. And for now, that is enough. And you may notice that with a little distance, something else becomes possible. Not clarity, not answers, but perspective. When things are no longer pressed right up against you, they gain shape. Edges appear. Spaces between them become visible. You don't have to look closely. You don't have to examine anything. Just sensing that there is more than one thing here is enough. You are not only what you carry. You are not only what asks for your attention. There is also the space from which you are noticing. That space doesn't rush. It doesn't lean forward. It doesn't reach out to fix. It simply allows things to be where they are. In this space, even difficult things can exist without overwhelming you. They are still present, still real, but they are no longer the entire field. You might imagine yourself standing a few steps back from your own life, not leaving it, not observing from far away, just enough distance to feel your feet on the ground, to feel your body supported by something other than effort. The ground holds you without asking anything in return. It doesn't require you to stay alert. It doesn't need you to manage what's above it. You can rest here, even while things remain unresolved. Distance allows that paradox. Nothing is finished. And still you can pause. Nothing is decided. And still you can soften. If this sense of space comes and goes, that's fine. You're not meant to hold it. Just touching it briefly is enough to remind the body that closeness is a choice, and that choice doesn't have to be made all the time. For now, let things remain where they are, a little farther away, a little less demanding, and let yourself stay here in this widened place where nothing needs your hands. There's a quiet misunderstanding about rest, that it requires release, that it asks for decisions, that it only comes after something is finished. But tonight, rest doesn't need any of that. You don't have to let go. You don't have to decide what stays and what leaves your life. You don't have to be ready. Instead of releasing, you can place. Instead of letting go, you can set something down. There's a difference. Letting go can feel final. It can feel like loss, like something important might slip away. Placing something down is temporary. It keeps everything intact. Nothing disappears. Nothing changes ownership. It's simply not in your hands for a while. So imagine that whatever you've been holding, the responsibilities, the expectations, the quiet pressure to stay alert, imagine that it's still yours. You're not abandoning it. You're just lowering it out of your grip, as if you're placing a bag on the floor beside you. You know it's there. You know you can pick it up again, but for now, your hands are free. Notice how different that feels from letting go. There's no risk here, no urgency. Nothing bad happens when your hands rest. The bag stays where it is. The world doesn't react. No alarms sound. You are allowed to pause without consequence. Sometimes we keep holding things because we're afraid that if we don't, everything will fall apart. But most things don't require constant grip. They require attention only when they are lifted. So for now, let gravity do the work. Let the weight be supported by something else. Your body understands this instinctively. When your hands release effort, your shoulders respond. Your neck eases. Your breath begins to drop lower on its own. You don't have to guide it. You don't have to slow it. The body recognizes when it's no longer responsible for holding. You may notice a small sense of relief, or you may notice nothing at all. Both are fine. Rest doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it arrives quietly as the absence of strain. You might feel the urge to pick things back up, a reflex, a habit. If that happens, you don't need to stop it. Just notice the impulse and allow the weight to remain on the floor a little longer. There is no rule about how long you must rest. There is no test you have to pass. This moment doesn't ask for discipline. It offers permission. You're not required to make this permanent. You're not asked to become someone who never carries anything. You're only being invited to experience what it's like not to hold everything right now. For some people, this is the first time in a long while their hands have been empty. That can feel unfamiliar, even uncomfortable. If emptiness feels strange, you don't need to fill it. Just let it be what it is. Space. Space doesn't demand anything. It doesn't judge how you use it. It simply exists, quietly supporting whatever comes next. You can stay here as long as you like. Nothing is waiting for you. Nothing is counting the time. The things you place down will still be there later, and you will still be capable of carrying them if you choose to. But for now, you don't need strength. You don't need readiness. You don't need to be the one who holds everything together. You can let the ground take the weight. You can let your hands rest in their natural shape. And if sleep comes here without effort, without transition, that's welcome too, because nothing important is being lost. You've only set things down for the night. And there's something else about setting things down that often goes unnoticed. When your hands are no longer occupied, they don't immediately know what to do. They may stay slightly tense, fingers curled, as if still holding weight that isn't there anymore. That's natural. The body doesn't release habits the moment effort ends. It needs a little time to trust the absence of demand. So if you notice a lingering tightness, you don't need to correct it. Just allow the hands to remain empty without forcing them to relax. Relaxation arrives on its own schedule. The same is true for the mind. Even when you set things down, thoughts may continue to hover nearby, checking, monitoring, making sure nothing has gone wrong. You don't need to stop this either. These movements are echoes of responsibility, not signs that rest has failed. Let the echoes fade at their own pace. You might imagine that the things you place down are resting too. They are no longer being carried. They are supported by the same ground that supports you. Nothing is pressing on them. Nothing is asking them to perform. In this shared stillness, there is a sense of fairness. You are allowed the same rest that you give to everything else. Sometimes we grant rest to objects, to spaces, to days that are finished, but we forget to grant it to ourselves. So if it helps, let this moment be mutual. The weight rests. And so do you. There is no signal that tells you when rest is complete. There is no marker that says you've done it correctly. You don't have to watch for the right feeling. Just staying here with nothing in your hands is enough. If your awareness drifts, let it. If sleep approaches quietly, without ceremony, you don't need to notice it. This place doesn't require your attention to continue. The ground remains steady, whether you're aware of it or not. And you can remain here, supported, unburdened by effort for as long as the night allows. After setting things down, there is often a natural movement, not forward, not away, just inward. It's the feeling of stepping into a quieter area without needing to travel. You haven't gone anywhere, and yet the atmosphere is different. There is less noise here, not because sound has stopped, but because nothing is competing for your attention. This place doesn't announce itself. There are no signs, no clear boundaries. You recognize it by how little is required of you. You don't need to respond. You don't need to be alert. You don't need to stay oriented. Time behaves differently here. Moments don't press against each other. They open, they widen. There is space between one breath and the next. You may notice that you're no longer waiting for something to happen. No next step, no outcome, just this moment arriving lingering and passing on its own. In this quiet place, nothing is improved, nothing is refined, there is no sense of progress, and because of that, there is no sense of falling behind. You don't need to know how long you've been here. Time isn't something you have to keep track of. It moves, whether you're watching it or not. Your body understands this space before your thoughts do. Muscles release in small ways. The jaw softens. The breath settles lower, not all at once, not dramatically, just enough to be noticed. This is not a retreat from life. It's a pause within it. A place where you're allowed to exist without effort. Nothing follows you here unless you invite it. And you don't have to invite anything. You can remain without reference, without story, without explanation. If thoughts appear, they don't echo. They arrive, touch the surface of awareness, and dissolve without leaving a trace. You don't need to hold on to this place. You don't need to stay. It remains available even if you drift. And if sleep begins somewhere nearby, slow and unannounced, this place doesn't resist it. It makes room. And as you remain here, you may begin to sense that this quiet place is not something you entered. It's something that revealed itself. Once there was space, it was always nearby, covered only by noise, by urgency, by the habit of staying engaged. Now that those layers have softened, this place feels closer than you expected. There is no center here, no point you're meant to arrive at. You don't need to orient yourself. There is no right direction. Front and back lose importance. Near and far become less distinct. You may notice that your awareness feels wider, not sharper, not more focused, just wider, as if it no longer needs to gather itself into one tight point. In this width, details matter less. You don't have to track the sound of this voice. You don't have to follow each sentence to the end. You can let words pass the way clouds do. Some may register, some may not. Nothing is lost when you miss them. Silence does not interrupt this place. It belongs here. Pauses feel natural. They don't need to be filled. Even when nothing happens, something is still present. A steady, unremarkable calm, not peaceful in a dramatic way, just uncomplicated. This place doesn't ask you to reflect on your life. It doesn't ask you to look inward or outward. It simply allows you to be here without commentary. If you try to describe it, it slips away. So there's no need to describe it. You may feel as though you're resting inside time rather than moving through it. Moments don't stack up. They don't accumulate. They appear and then gently clear, making room for the next. Nothing is carried forward. Even memory feels lighter here. You don't have to remember how you arrived. You don't have to remember what came before this. Each moment is complete on its own. Your body responds to this simplicity. Breathing becomes less deliberate. The rhythm finds itself. There's no effort to slow it down. It slows because there's no reason to rush. The surface of your awareness smooths out. Sharp edges soften. Transitions blur. If you notice yourself drifting, that's a sign that you're close enough. You don't need to stay alert to remain here. This place does not disappear when attention fades. It stays whether you're aware of it or not. And if sleep begins to take shape, not suddenly, but as a gradual leaning, this quiet place leans with you. It doesn't pull you back. It doesn't hold you up. It simply continues, unchanged, as you rest more deeply. There is nothing further to reach for here, nothing waiting just beyond the edge. This place is not a destination. It is a condition that remains when nothing else is being demanded, and you are free to stay as long as the night allows. There is a moment, sometimes late at night, when the names you answer to begin to fade, not disappear, just lose their urgency. You don't stop being who you are. You simply stop being for someone. The roles you carry have shape during the day. They come with expectations, with responsibilities, with ways you're meant to respond. But here, in this quieter stretch of time, those shapes soften. You don't need to perform them. You don't need to remember how they usually work. You can let them rest where they are. You are not required to be useful right now. You are not required to be available. No one is waiting for you to respond. Even if there are people in your life who rely on you, this moment does not belong to them. It belongs to the part of you that exists before any role was learned, before you were needed, before you were named, before you were expected to be anything in particular. That part of you has been here the whole time. It doesn't ask to be acknowledged. It doesn't demand attention. It simply continues, steady and unchanged, beneath everything else. As roles fade, you may notice a sense of simplicity, not emptiness, simplicity. You are not reduced by the absence of roles. You are revealed. There is less to maintain, less to keep in place. You don't have to remember what comes next. You don't have to anticipate how you'll be needed tomorrow. Those concerns can wait outside this space. They know how to find you later. Here, you don't belong to a schedule. You don't belong to a function. You belong to this moment, and this moment doesn't ask you to do anything. Your body recognizes this freedom before your thoughts do. The effort it has been holding begins to dissolve. Posture softens. Muscles release their instructions. Breathing becomes less guarded. You don't need to protect anything here. If thoughts arise about who you should be or what you haven't done, you don't need to correct them. Just let them pass through without attaching your name. They can exist without referring to you. Gradually, even the sense of you begins to feel less defined. Not in a frightening way, not as a loss, more like a loosening of edges. You are still here, but you are not confined to a single outline. There is room around you. You can feel yourself supported by something that doesn't require identity. You don't need to remember your history. You don't need to carry your story forward. For now, you are allowed to exist without narrative, without context, without explanation. And if sleep finds you here gently and without signal, there is nothing you need to bring with you. No role needs to follow. You can rest as yourself before all names. And as the roles continue to soften, you may notice that your sense of time changes with them. When nothing is being asked of you, time no longer presses forward. It doesn't pull you into what comes next. It doesn't remind you of what should already be done. It simply stretches gently without direction. You are not late here. You are not early. You are not on your way to anything. This moment does not lead anywhere, and because of that, it is complete on its own. When you no longer have to be someone for anyone, even briefly, the body responds in quiet ways. The small muscles that hold readiness begin to release. The kind of readiness that doesn't feel like tension until it's gone. the kind that comes from always being slightly prepared to move, to speak, to respond. Here, there is no reason to stay prepared. You don't need to listen for cues. You don't need to be aware of your surroundings. You don't need to keep track of yourself. Even the idea of self can rest. You are still here, but you are no longer defined by edges. There is no clear outline you need to maintain, no posture you need to hold, no version of yourself you need to keep intact. You can simply be present as sensation, as warmth, as breath, as weight supported by something steady beneath you. If you notice a thought that tries to reassemble a role, a reminder of who you are supposed to be or what you usually do, you don't need to follow it. It doesn't require your attention to exist. It can pass by, unfinished, without consequence. Nothing in this moment depends on you remembering yourself correctly. You don't have to carry your name. You don't have to carry your history. You don't have to carry the continuity of your life forward through the night. Those things are not fragile. They will still be there when you return to them. For now, they do not need to accompany you. There is a deep rest that comes from not being defined, not erased, not lost, just temporarily undefined, like a shape dissolving into the background, still present but no longer separate from the space around it. This kind of rest does not feel dramatic. It feels ordinary, almost unremarkable. And because it is unremarkable, it is easy to stay here. Nothing is happening that you need to remember. Nothing is being accomplished. Nothing is being improved. And yet, something important is occurring. The effort of being someone is pausing. The constant subtle work of maintaining identity, of keeping track of yourself, is no longer required. You are allowed to exist without reference, without comparison, without function, without explanation. And if sleep begins to gather around you here, slowly and without instruction, you don't need to adjust. You don't need to prepare. You don't need to take anything with you. You can rest as presence alone, before roles, before names, before expectations. At some point in the night, meaning begins to loosen, not suddenly, not completely, just enough to stop holding together. Words still arrive, sounds still register, but they no longer insist on being understood. You may notice that you are listening without actively following. Sentences move past without needing to land, and that's fine. Nothing here depends on comprehension. Nothing requires you to stay with it. Meaning is something we usually grip tightly. We listen for it. We organize around it. We carry it forward. But rest doesn't need meaning to function. The body doesn't ask what something means before it softens. The breath doesn't wait for explanation before it deepens. So tonight meaning is allowed to drift. If a phrase makes sense, it can pass. If it doesn't, it can pass too. There is no difference. You are not missing anything. Understanding is not the point here. You may notice that attention itself is changing shape. It no longer moves in straight lines. It doesn't track from beginning to end. It spreads. It blurs. It rests more easily in between things than on them. This is not confusion. It's release. Release from the effort of making sense. Release from the habit of turning experience into something usable. Nothing needs to be useful right now. Nothing needs to be retained. You are allowed to forget what you hear the moment you hear it. The night does not test memory. The night does not ask for coherence. It simply holds. You may feel moments where thought tries to reassemble itself, trying to follow, trying to understand, trying to stay oriented. When that happens, you don't need to push it away. Just let it tire itself out. Effort fades when it's no longer rewarded. And here, there is nothing to gain by trying. So attention loosens again. Words become softer. Their edges dissolve. They turn into rhythm, into tone, into something closer to sound than meaning. This is where rest deepens, not because something is learned, but because nothing is being held. You don't need to decide whether you're awake or asleep. That distinction matters less here. Awake can rest, sleep can listen. Both are welcome. Time also begins to feel less defined. Moments stretch without direction. There is no sense of before or after, only a gentle continuation that doesn't need to be tracked. You might not remember how long you've been here. You might forget that time is passing at all. That's natural. Time does not announce itself when nothing is being measured. Even the idea of progression begins to fade. There is no movement forward. There is only a soft remaining, a staying, a presence that doesn't need to know itself. Meaning continues to thin, not gone, just lighter, like a word repeated until it becomes sound, like a thought repeated until it becomes quiet. You don't have to wait for the next sentence. You don't have to follow the last one. Everything is already where it needs to be. If you notice gaps between words, let them open. Silence is not empty here. It is part of the structure. It carries as much as sound does. And if your awareness drifts in and out, that's exactly right. You are not meant to stay present in a sharp way. Soft presence is enough. Even absence is welcome. Nothing breaks when attention fades. Nothing ends. The voice continues. The night continues. And you are free to drift without returning. Meaning is no longer the guide. And without a guide, there is no need to move. You can remain in this loosening, this thinning, this gentle unbinding of sense. Nothing else is required. As meaning continues to loosen, you may notice that even the effort to notice begins to fade. Awareness no longer feels like something you are doing. It feels more like something that is happening on its own, without direction, without intention. You are not following the sound, and you are not leaving it either. It simply passes through the same space you are resting in. At this point, words no longer need to be separated from silence. They belong to the same texture. Sound and quiet are no longer different experiences. They alternate gently, without contrast, without emphasis. Nothing stands out. Nothing needs to. You may feel yourself slipping in and out of clarity, a moment of listening, a moment of drifting, a moment where you are not sure whether you are listening at all. This uncertainty does not need to be resolved. It does not signal anything wrong. It is simply the mind letting go of the need to locate itself. When the mind no longer checks where it is, rest deepens naturally. There is no observer trying to confirm the experience. No part of you needs to stay awake in order for rest to continue. The process no longer depends on attention. Thoughts may still appear, but they are thinner now. They do not connect to each other. They do not build. They rise, lose their shape, and dissolve before they finish forming. You do not need to witness this. It happens whether you are aware of it or not. Meaning at this stage is almost transparent. You can see through it. It does not block anything. It does not organize experience into pieces. It simply floats lightly without weight. You might notice that even the sense of being someone listening has softened. There is sound, but no listener is required. There is presence, but no center it needs to gather around. Everything exists without being referenced. This is not emptiness. It is not disappearance. It is a state where nothing needs to be defined in order to exist. Experience does not need a label. It does not need to be remembered. It does not need to be carried forward. Time, too, becomes indistinct. It no longer moves in a line. It spreads out like a surface without markers. You are not moving through it. You are resting within it. There is no moment you need to reach, no transition you need to notice. If sleep arrives here, it does not interrupt anything. It does not change the scene. It simply blends in quietly without signaling its arrival. And if you remain partially awake, that is also fine. Wakefulness no longer has a task. There's nothing you're supposed to be hearing, nothing you're supposed to be following. The voice does not lead. It only continues steadily without expectation. You are not required to return to meaning. You are not required to understand what is being said. Meaning has already done its work, and now it is free to dissolve. All that remains is rhythm, tone, continuation, a gentle unfolding that does not ask where it is going. You can let yourself remain here without checking, without effort, without reference, as the night carries you further into rest. As the night continues, language begins to thin even further. Words are still present, but they no longer behave like messages. They are closer to breath than to meaning. They arrive, resonate briefly, and fade without asking to be understood. You don't need to listen closely now. You don't need to follow what is being said. The sound can stay at the surface of awareness, like a gentle movement that doesn't require response. Hearing becomes passive, effortless. At this point, it may feel as though the voice is no longer speaking to you. It is simply present, sharing the same space, like a sound in the distance that you notice without turning toward it. Nothing in this moment needs interpretation. There is no instruction hidden in the words, no guidance you might miss. Everything important has already been said, and even that no longer matters. You may notice that the boundary between sound and silence has softened. Pauses no longer feel like gaps. They feel like part of the same flow. Sound arises, sound fades, silence holds, and then sound returns again. Nothing interrupts this rhythm. Your body responds to this simplicity. Breathing no longer adjusts itself. It simply continues. Muscles no longer respond to cues. They remain where they are, supported, without direction. There is no need to stay oriented. You don't need to know where you are in the story. You don't need to remember what came before this. Sequence is no longer relevant. If attention drifts completely away from the sound, that is welcome. If it returns briefly, that is also welcome. Nothing changes either way. The experience no longer depends on participation. Thoughts may appear only as fragments now, not full sentences, not clear images, just small movements that dissolve before forming. You don't need to watch them fade. they fade on their own. You may notice moments where there is no clear sense of listening at all, just a vague awareness that sound exists somewhere nearby. Even that awareness may come and go. This is not a problem to solve. It is a sign that effort has fully released. Here, sound functions the way waves do at night. You don't count them. You don't follow each one. You simply know they are there, continuing whether you pay attention or not. The voice can become part of the background, like wind, like distant water, like something steady and unchanging. You are not expected to stay awake for this. You are not expected to fall asleep either. Both states are equally acceptable here. The night makes room for either. Time is no longer something you move through. It spreads out evenly, without markers. There is no sense of approaching an end. There is no anticipation of what comes next. Everything has slowed to a simple continuation. Sound, pause, sound again. Nothing builds, nothing resolves, and gradually even the distinction between sound and rest becomes less clear. The voice blends into the same space that holds your breathing, your weight, your presence. You don't need to stay with it. You don't need to return. The night can carry this forward without you, and from here it becomes natural to let sound remain, even as attention fades completely. Words no longer need to be noticed, meaning no longer needs to be present. Only the gentle continuation of tone remains, steady and unobtrusive, preparing the space for what comes next. As the sound continues, there is no longer a need to stay with words at all. You don't have to listen for meaning, and you don't have to follow what comes next. From here, sound is allowed to exist on its own, without explanation, without direction. You may notice that understanding has already done everything it needs to do. There is nothing left to grasp, nothing left to interpret. The mind does not need to stay open or alert. It can rest fully now. From this point on, you don't need to be aware of what you hear. You don't need to recognize sounds as language. They can pass through as vibration, as tone, as rhythm. Hearing no longer requires attention. If you are still awake, you can let the sound remain in the background, like a steady presence that doesn't ask anything of you. If you are drifting towards sleep, you don't need to hold on to the voice. It will continue without your involvement. Nothing important will be missed. Nothing essential depends on listening. The sound is here simply to accompany the night, not to guide it. You don't need to stay connected to this moment. You don't need to remember it. The body already knows how to rest. The breath already knows how to slow. Sound is only supporting what is happening naturally. From here, the sound becomes simpler, more continuous, less shaped by words. It does not move forward. It does not lead anywhere. It remains gently, allowing everything else to fade. You are free to let go of attention entirely now, free to let sound continue on its own, free to sleep or to remain in quiet awareness without choosing. Nothing changes if you stop listening. Nothing ends if awareness fades. The sound will remain steady and unobtrusive, carrying the night forward in its own rhythm. And from here, there is no need for language at all. Only sound remains. There is nothing else you need to do. Sometimes peace is not something we must learn. It is something we remember. The world pulls us outward toward goals, toward noise, toward endless motion. But when the heart grows quiet, we begin to sense a deeper rhythm beneath it all, a rhythm that has always been waiting, softly calling us home. This quiet home lives inside you, but it can be easy to forget. That is why Gassho exists, not to add anything new, but to help you return. A space built for stillness, for reflection, for the gentle work of being. In its name, Gassho, there is a gesture, two hands meeting in respect and gratitude, a gesture of unity between self and world, between heart and breath, between sound and silence. When you open the Gassho app, you are not entering another screen. You are stepping into a small temple that travels with you, a place where you can sit without expectation, breathe without demand, and listen without effort. Inside you will find guided meditations, stories inspired by Buddhist wisdom, and the steady presence of sutras, not as lessons, but as companions. The sound you are about to hear is one of those companions, a sound carried through generations, a sound shaped by breath, devotion, and time. You do not need to understand the words. You do not need to follow the rhythm. You do not need to stay awake for it. Let the sound arrive as it is. Let it move through awareness without resistance. Let it remain even as attention fades. There is nothing left to do, only to rest. Let the breath settle. Let the body sink, and simply listen. The sound of the sutra continues, offered from a temple in the quiet mountains of Koyasan, shared here through the Gassho app whenever you wish to return to silence.
有 宗福心所有上連帝本天無意合創年所有聖法因地心聖上連有事銀行三万化佐東海来世界欲霊死法不幸不可即宗宗環境小三銀行